On today's show, the Phoenix Suns' Big Three got their debut finally, but it was short-lived as Bradley Beal went down with yet another injury. What did we learn in their time on the floor together, and how much longer can the Phoenix Suns keep waiting for this Big Three to finally actually be able to get on the court together? Plus, can the Phoenix Suns' defense improve at all this season? It's all coming up right here at Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They're the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports because it's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you just pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Prize Picks is so simple to play. You can make your picks and submit an entry in less than 60 seconds. They've got quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types, which is what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app on the market. And with basketball season here and in full swing, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League, a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. For example, you can do LeBron James plus Travis Kelce in a 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made plus reception. So if you've been thinking about getting into daily fantasy sports, you've got to give Prize Picks a chance. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for that first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks is daily fantasy sports made easy. Joining us now is the host of Locked On Suns, Brendon Kleen, who you can track down wherever you listen to your podcasts, and on YouTube, just search Locked On Suns. And Brendon, we got the fated day finally arrived. We got a look at the Suns' Big Three in action. A short-lived kind of preview, I guess, of the Big Three. They played a couple games together, and then Bradley Beal suffers the ankle injury 5 minutes into the game against the Knicks, so he'll be out for another. So what's the current evaluation timetable? It's 3 weeks, 4 weeks that he's going to be out for?
Yeah, the latest reporting, the team hasn't said anything, but it sounds like 2 to 3 weeks, judging from our local beat writer over here. So yeah, another sustained absence for Beal, who just finished a 3-week shutdown for his back issue.
Yeah, well, so let's go through just, we got to look at the Big Three playing together. How did they kind of look just in their debut against the Warriors?
Yeah, very rocky. I mean, I think overall in terms of playing together, but at the same time, I think the Suns, they had an offensive rating in the game on Wednesday night against Brooklyn that was higher than their season average. They won the minutes when all 3 were on the court, which was about 20 in that game. And all 3 guys shot better than 50% from the field, had 4+ assists, and the turnovers, they kept them in check, which has been a problem for them as an offense this year. So if you had just looked at that and said, all right, and there will be 60 more of these, I would have felt great about how the progress could go from there. But, with another setback for Beal and, games piling up now, I think the injury on Friday night ends up just being a situation where I think you have to treat it a little bit as, let's figure out Booker and Durant. Let's figure out the rotation and sort of put some of the Big Three imagination to bed for a little while, because if you keep treating that as when the season's going to finally start, you're going to be halfway through it before that happens at this point.
Yeah, I mean, at least when they did get a chance to be on the court with one another, did it feel... You said it felt rocky. I mean, is this a thing where there's a lot of... I know it's only a 2-game sample size now to look at, very limited minutes, but does it at least feel... Does it feel like there's a world where, okay, when Beal is finally healthy, he can be plug and play, and it's going to be easy for these 3 to figure it out? Or was there a world where you're like, no, there's going to be some growing pains for these 3, and it's not as simple as just get Beal healthy and it's going to work?
I think in the regular season, it'll work pretty well right away. And I think that's what you saw on Wednesday, because again, they didn't play together outside of one preseason game. And it wasn't like this was a rest situation. So obviously they weren't getting practice time together either. And yet those numbers I listed in their overall offensive performance was pretty solid right away. So yeah, I think they'll be able to be efficient, be productive, win games, pile up a lot of points together when they're all healthy, no matter when that ends up happening. But I think, bigger picture, longer term, and this is still a team that wants to win a championship, as weird of a thing that might be to say at, the 25 game mark here with them being around 500. They're going to need, plan B, C, and D in a playoff series. They're going to need sets that they go to, and on a team also that doesn't really have a traditional point guard who is, orchestrating everything from start to finish in a game like a Nikola Jokic or a Luka Doncic or a LeBron James in the Western Conference. It would have been really valuable, and whenever it happens, it will be really valuable for them to just get reps of who's initiating and how, and what's the comfort level there. How do you get all these guys to play fast, which this team has been just like in mud all season long with how slow they're playing. All those things would have been really important. Hopefully there will still be time to figure them out, but yeah, you're going to be able to win still. But I think the best version of this team and all the things that they're going to need to be ready for come postseason time, that's what you're losing, I think, with them out.
Yeah, you mentioned there a moment ago, might having to kind of pivot, I guess, to a bit of a plan B, right? Make it more about how do we make Booker and Durant work together, right? Just focus on the two that are healthy, the two that are, available on a nightly basis. I mean, at what point, though, how significant does the concern become? Because at this rate, Beal makes it back. You've got about maybe a month to figure out, to kind of assess any, major weaknesses on the roster, to see the chemistry of these guys together before the trade deadline hits, to maybe shore up any of those potential weaknesses on the roster. At what point do you have to just decide, okay, if Beal can get healthy, cool, but we have to focus on the team that we have available right now?
Yeah, that's one of the things I think I want to see in this stretch from the Suns, regardless of Beal being out, is, and it speaks to the mentality that I'm hoping that they have of being done waiting for that. Because on Friday against the Knicks, and I understand Beal leaving the game ended up a very quick adjustment that you have to deal with, and Eric Gordon was still out in that game. But they have to just settle on a rotation, settle on a style of play, settle on an identity from a size standpoint, all these different things that it's just excuse time is kind of over, I think, for this team. And not that they've been making excuses for their losses, but they've been making excuses for the lack of stability. You just need to create the stability and then hope that Beal can just plug into that as you continue the season. From a trade standpoint, they don't have a lot to get to trade themselves right now, no matter what. So they're probably not looking at anything significant. But we also know some of the needs that this team has. I think, their front court depth has been a problem. I think that if you could get another playmaker who could at least kind of dribble and pass, like that would go a long way towards stabilizing things, as we talked about a minute ago. So maybe they can start to look at moves like that, regardless of Beal's availability. But it's not going to give them a lot of time before the deadline. But even really now big picture with the season, you're talking about, January 1st or so, 4 months. And even then, that's if you're fully healthy the rest of the way. It is going to be even more condensed than we could have thought for this team to figure it out.
You talked about this team and kind of finding an identity, I guess, here. The identity of many Frank Vogel-led teams in the past has been a defense-first identity. The Suns have been anything but that this season so far, unfortunately. They're sitting currently, at the time of this recording, 20th in defensive rating across the NBA landscape, so just at the top edge of bottom third in the league. What's been the biggest issue so far defensively for the Suns team? And is there a world where, what needs to happen for the Suns team to maybe even crack middle of the pack defensively? Is there a world where they can improve and become a good defensive team, or is the identity just going to have to be they've got to outgun their opponents?
Well, that is going to be the identity, but they also have to get better on defense. There's not really a team that you can point to that was really championship caliber that had a defense hovering around 20th in the league. That's just not going to be good enough. And what the biggest issue has been is they don't take away the paint. and they don't defend well in transition. And those are two things that Vogel teams have done. And they, I mean, these numbers fluctuate, but they're basically bottom 10 in terms of opponent at rim frequency and at rim efficiency. And that's tracked most of the year. That's not really like a recent trend by any means. So that has to change. They don't do themselves any favors with transition defense by themselves turning the ball over as an offense so much, but that is what it is. You have to clean that up. And rebounding. I mean, they've been a pretty good offensive rebounding team, but they've also allowed a lot of that themselves. So, Vogel teams like to take that away. I don't think this team has the perfect personnel to do that, but I think if you do settle into more of a clear rotation night to night, you can start to work in, is it a zone? Is it really aggressive help? Is it, executing team specific game plans at a higher level and just being maybe more prepared than your opponent? That's where I think coaching can help, but because of their lack of cohesion and continuity and availability of their best players, and it's not just Beal or Durant or Booker, like Gordon, somebody I already mentioned, has missed games here and there. He's, in his mid-30s. Grayson Allen recently missed a stretch. So it's really their whole top 8 outside of like Yusuf Nurkic has missed a lot of time. If they can get players back, wait for Beal, leave that in the distance, don't even think about it. Say, here's our 8 or 9 that we're going to play every night. Here's what we need to execute. I think that they can start to turn a little bit of a corner on defense, but what they're doing now is just not cutting it, even when they do score a bunch of points.
Will the Suns be able to change their approach now that the big three gets put on the back burner yet again this season? Can they get things turned around defensively and crack into at least, top half of the league defensively, middle of the pack at worst? You're going to have us covered for all of that and more over at Locked On Suns. Brendon, thanks for stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
Thank you.